We've started.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the decision day of myself, the Executive Lead Member for Children's Services and the Executive Member for Education, Councillor Forster. These decision days are being broadcast on one session live on YouTube via the County Council website. So we go straight into my decision day. The first item on the agenda for my decision day is the proposed changes to School Transport Policy 2026. And first of all, before we present this report, I'm going to invite Councillor Porter to speak on this item. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Councillor Shadd. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm just going to start by saying I object to this decision, and I'll explain the reason why. So deciding to close the spare places scheme seems counterintuitive to creating efficient transport to save money. I fully agreed at the time with the renaming of the privileged places scheme to spare capacity spaces scheme. It's a true descriptor of what it is. It's not a privilege, it's merely a way to ensure that a bus with empty spaces that passes by a child who is not entitled to free transport, that those child's parents could apply to use that spare space if parents paid and if there was space on the bus. This service has been used by relatively few parents. I gather 66 used it in the last educational year and 14 are using it at the current time. So it has been discouraged for some time now, so that number may have been higher, and I know that the number of applicants were higher, but not necessarily the number of take-up. This meant that if there was a space on a bus, a child could travel to school without resorting to a lift from others. It's a valuable resource for parents without access to a vehicle, for people who need to get to work, often working at another school, I've discovered recently, actually, living in areas poorly served by buses, and for children who have to take a long walk from home to reach their school. In my division, implementation of this scheme has already resulted in a parent having to employ a driver to get their child to school, not a DBS check driver, just anybody that they could find. With the imminent cessation of the Henry bus, both at buses from the Worthies, I know there were a lot of responses from them, and there will inevitably be a bus passing through the villages that has a space on it. The children will be walking 3 miles when their neighbours and friends will be having a lie-in and catching the school bus. Parents don't want to add more car journeys through the village to the school, but feel that their children cannot safely do that journey walking alone for whatever reason. Inevitably, if you live 3 miles away, you're going to be one of those lonely children making that journey on your own. At 3.01 miles away, your school friend and neighbour will be entitled to a school bus place. Parents are looking to find a way to create a transport scheme for those children who are younger, whose parents do not want to add a car to the school route, who cannot take them to and from school, and those who believe their education is at risk from travelling to school by walking. Henry Burster estimates that of the 183 children using the school bus, there are less than 30 children entitled to free transport in the Worthies. That's a bus that will be commissioned by Hampshire County Council. To let a school bus go past these children without consideration, that's the children that are catching it, would be the 30, but to let the school bus go past the children who don't have a school place without consideration of allowing them to use the spare capacity scheme on the county commissioned bus just seems financial and carbon footprint madness. The County Council include an admin cost in the cost of the place. It doesn't have to cost the council a penny, and actually it could lessen the overall transport cost per child. This decision doesn't make sense, and I don't think the paper justifies the decision at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. John, can I ask you to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you. I'll present it as I was kind of planning, and then I'll sort of hopefully answer some of the points along the way. And if there are additional points, then I can cover those at the end if that's the right way of doing it. So the report is the purpose of the report is to update the executive member on the results of a public consultation on changing school transport policy, and to recommend that the executive member approves those changes. In brief, the changes are, as we've heard, cease the formal spare capacity seat scheme, And also there is a second group of changes that are around just increasing clarity in the policy to reflect the way the service is already delivered on the ground, and the way that the service is described in things like code of conducts and on the website. There was a consultation on these proposals that ran from the 3rd of November to the 7th of December 2025. And as I said, there's about 2 proposals. The first one is ceasing the spare capacity scheme, and that's covered in the report from paragraphs 28 through to 38. As it says in those paragraphs, the spare capacity seat scheme is not a statutory requirement. It is discretionary, and it's also important to know it is far from guaranteed that any particular student would get a place on that scheme. It's really not very many students are using it this year, as Councillor Porter has mentioned. There are 14 approved applications this year. That's out of 163. And the reason for that is that the service has concentrated and had the time to concentrate on making sure that the capacity of buses that we offer matches the demand from eligible children. And so the likelihood of there being a spare seat that matches a child's need has decreased. The scheme basically is just reliant on there being a match at a particular place between the student who wants a spare capacity seat and a space being available, and that is increasingly not the case, particularly as a result of changes to the way that the team do the work of allocating passengers to seats. It's increasingly rare, and what that means is that the formal kind of on-demand nature of the current scheme creates expectations of parents that in the end we aren't able to fulfill because those spaces don't exist. In terms of some of the things that Councillor Porter mentioned, there has always been this kind of divide at the 3 mile line, if you like. But what the surveys do is that they look at the whole of the group, if you like, of the students that go into one school, and they use some quite sophisticated software to come up with a design for the service going in that matches that demand, and it can match it almost exactly in a lot of cases because we've got various options. And in the case of Kingsworthy, for example, it might be that we reroute an existing bus to pick up those sort of 30 odd students. It might be that there are other sizes of school buses, and it might be that the optimum size for that is one that's around about 30. So we don't know that until we've got the exact numbers of students, but a lot of work goes into actually making sure that the service is tailored to the demand from eligible students. And just because there are kind of situations, as Councillor Porter described, it doesn't necessarily lead to there being spare capacity available. It is quite a kind of detailed job that the team do in terms of matching various options to get the most efficient setup of journeys. And as we've seen this year, with only 14 spare capacity applications being approved, that is starting to work so that we have very, very little spare capacity. Going back to the consultation, within the feedback on that particular item, 50% of the comments disagreed with the change and 34% agreed with it, and that's in paragraph 52 of the report. And comments from the parents referred to various things such as their own work commitments. Rurality was mentioned as well, and work commitments are something that comes up often in school transport, and it is something that the guidance is very clear on from the Department for Education, that parents are expected to kind of juggle those areas of their lives, the area where they are a parent and the area where they are an employee, and make arrangements for their children to attend school. The rurality is actually can be a bit of an exemplar of the issue with whether there is even spare capacity. So in a rural location, populations are obviously more dispersed, and therefore school catchments are bigger. And what that means is that if a child in a rural area is attending their catchment school, it's quite likely they are entitled to school transport. So the only reason that we would need to put on a spare capacity in that situation, if a student was not attending the catchment school, and there wouldn't be a bus for that because the bus is actually going into the catchment school. And what it means is that what is perceived as kind of there being a lot of spare capacity out there, quite a lot of it just isn't going to the right place and doesn't come from the right place. So it's that matching job that my team do. And in those areas, it is just increasingly rare that there is a match. So that's it on that part of it. The other part I think is a bit simpler. There are the second change is to improve the clarity of the policy, to introduce a quick guide, which is one of the options in paragraphs, where is it, 39 and 40. They refer to what the changes are, and a quick guide is part R. Across those changes, which are labelled A to U, most of those are things that are already either in policy but are moving it so it becomes more prominent, or they're things that are already in the kind of practices of the team. And we think it's important to put it into the policy that's how the service will operate, because that just makes sure it's there in front of parents in as many places as possible. And what's important with all of those changes is they lead to no savings, and they lead to no changes in the way that the service is actually operated. It's just basically putting into policy what we already do. In terms of the feedback on those, that is covered at paragraph 52. No, sorry, 52 is the other one. Sorry, I will go further down. 64, and not surprisingly, the one that received the most feedback is the reference F, which is about walking routes being referred to as available rather than safe, and that again ties into the situation between Kingsworthy and Henry Beaufort School. The reason for that change is that the word available is the word that's used in the legislation that sets out the 2 and 3 mile distances, and comments there were talking about the fact that available doesn't necessarily mean it's safe, whereas actually the definition of the word available from the Road Safety GB guidance is a route that is available to walk in reasonable safety. So I think availability of a route does include an assessment that it is of reasonable safety. Again, well, as I said before, the kind of comments that come in are all kind of covered in paragraph 70, but what they do is none of these changes actually make a difference to how the service is delivered. So in a sense, it's just going back to what we already do, and there are no changes to the kind of day-to-day experience of students travelling that will come from these changes. It's just making it a little bit more clear and obvious to parents. And hopefully I've answered some of Councillor Porter's points, but I will happily take questions.
Thank you, John. I think just to say a few words about what Councillor Porter said. Thank you, Jackie, for your words today. I think what we've kind of got there is two different scenarios actually. So we've got the spare capacity, and then the safer, the available walk-in route, and that has been so the spare capacity, we've heard from John that actually it's not as reliable for parents as we would possibly desire it to be, because once an eligible child moves into that area, there is the potential that young person can lose their space on the bus. And that's, as a parent myself, that is just something that I personally wouldn't want to have to consider. I'd rather have it within my own control of taking my child to school in that respect, and not being reliant on something that could be taken away from me if another child actually has that eligible need for it. And on that, it is the parents' responsibility to get their child to school as well. And I think that's an important thing that we often quite forget. All of us on this call that have young children, we are the ones that need to get them into school every day for that good attendance. In regards to the availability of a walk-in route, that puts, with the Henry Beaufort children in particular, that puts them at a level stature as every other child in Hampshire. It moves it back in line in that respect. So
you've gone on to mute, Ros.
thank you. Sorry, and that's so that's two different situations that we are dealing with there as well. So I think in regards to that, I'm happy with how John's presented the report and the explanations that he's given there. I note that Councillor Forster has got a question to ask. Do you want to ask your question?
Thank you, Councillor Chad. Thank you, Ros. Another question it's just a comment, if I may. I totally sympathise with Councillor Porter's comments, and undoubtedly some of the parents in her area have had similar issues in mine, and I used to get a lot of requests on it. We had more issues with the late availability of spare places with the limited number that were available in previous years, because as detailed in the report and hopefully by John, those spare places quite often didn't open up till mid-October or even later. So because we have to keep the spaces available for the start of term, and that meant parents had already made arrangements for a month to 2 months for their children. And as Councillor Chad described, those spaces can be withdrawn. So it leaves a lack of predictability. The fact that we are optimising and tailoring the vehicles that we use to the number of students that need it is good news and in line with government legislation. That is what we're encouraged to do. And that is exactly what we're doing. And the fact that we've had staff available to do that, rather than dealing with queries and trying to sort out parents that didn't know what they were doing, is good news. And this gives us an increase in predictability. So as I say, I do sympathise, but I do think it's absolutely the right thing to do, so that it helps parents choose the right schools. And it still does leave the discretionary element where it's absolutely appropriate for reasons that are pretty well defined. But enabling someone to get to work, I'm afraid, doesn't tie in with national legislation, much as it would be nice to be able to do that.
Those teachers.
Much as it would be nice to do that, that's not what government want or fund us to do. So we can't do that. So I do support it, and equally I agree in terms of the walking distances, etc. We can't prioritise one group over the national policy and the county-wide policy. That would be unfair on residents across the rest of Hampshire. So I do fully support the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Two things that we can do, though, just thinking on this, is, Councillor Porter, we can offer some help and advice to those families that are affected by either a change of an availability of a walking route, or if they are going to lose the spare capacity seat. But also one thing that we can do as local members, because obviously this is, we take our guidance and we use the legislation from central government, we can absolutely all as members lobby our local MPs to seek some changes in that legislation as well. And I know that, you know, both Councillor Forster and I, when we do meet the MPs, we regularly bring up school transport and how old the legislation is actually that's used on this, and how much there needs to be some revision in it done with it as well. So, you know, if we can all do that jointly, then that can only be for the benefit of our young people across the county, and we can certainly all work together to lobby our MPs to seek a change in that legislation going forward. But I think we are tied by that legislation as a county council, and that's what we have to adhere to. But I'm very, very willing to lobby our MPs more to try and seek that change in it. I know that's not particularly the answers that you were looking for, Councillor Porter, and yeah, but that's...
May I respond? May I respond?
Absolutely.
Just a question.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing is that from this, the frustrating thing is that there are circumstances where I have one lady, I don't want to share the circumstances too deeply, but she's recently been widowed and her family are really in a complete state about this. And a spare capacity seat could give that person the opportunity of getting the children to school, because she's got 3 children in two different schools, and it's a catchment school. So at the moment, we have that flexibility. I know only 14 have got it, but that 14 have been well chosen for a reason. And I've got other families where we've got social workers that are working, and head teachers and deputy head teachers, and that I don't want special treatment for someone who has no need of that. But there are situations where socially and from a social work point of view, there would be a value, and to take this away off the mark completely just seems crazy.
Stuart, you want to come in? I think I know what you might be saying.
Yeah, well, it was just to reassure you, Councillor Porter, that we still have a discretionary policy. So there are always exceptions, and John and his team are very used to looking at those sensitively and supportively. I can't always say they'll be agreed, but there are exceptions to any policy, and that's right and proper. So there is still that flexibility within our policy overall. Thank you.
But they see within the detail of how to appeal that doesn't appear to come up in the criteria. So is it me as a county council that can advise them on that, or is it the school, or is it yourselves? I don't know quite how that works, because if you look at the appeal stage, they can't see anything in there that justifies their appeal.
No, because they're not an exception. I think that's my point. There is an exception policy if someone has particular circumstances. The example I always give is if someone has to go into hospital, we might be able to arrange transport for their children for a couple of weeks till they're out of hospital and they've got other arrangements in place. It's that sort of exception that I'm talking about, not a long-term exception because of a distance to school, for example.
Councillor Porter, can I suggest that you send both Stuart, myself and John those cases that you've highlighted, and then we can take a look at those and see what opportunities there are, and if nothing else, advise on what can be done. Is that okay? Thank you. Have I got any more questions or comments? This one. Okay, so I'll go to the recommendations, and it's recommendations A to C, and I'm happy to approve each of those recommendations. And Councillor Porter, please do send those cases in to us in regards to the ones that you've mentioned today, and the 3 of us will look at those as well. But thank you, John, for the report today. The next item on the agenda is item 2, and it's the determination of the post-16 transport policy for 26-27. I need to declare an interest in this item due to my role as a governor at Farnborough College of Technology. In accordance with the process set out in the Constitution, the leader has delegated the decision to Councillor Forster, and I will hand over to him for this item.
Thank you, Councillor Chad. I do appreciate that, and I'm happy to take this item, the determination of the post-16 transport policy for 26-27, on your behalf. John, I think you're in the hot seat again, presenting this.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Yes. Again, the purpose of the report is to inform members of the results of a consultation and to recommend changes to the post-16 policy, and that we publish the policy before the 31st of May. We have a statutory duty to review and publish our post-16 transport policy every year by the 31st of May for the academic year beginning the following September. In this case, the changes to the post-16 policy were very small. Those changes went out to the same consultation over the same period as the main policy from the 3rd of November to the 7th of December. And the changes are outlined in the report paragraphs 19 to 23. And they are briefly to update the wording, so that it is clearer, particularly about appeals, and to bring it more into line with the main policy on appeals, to introduce, as per the other policy, a quick guide that would hopefully make things a little bit easier for parents and families to understand, and then some kind of housekeeping stuff around fixing links that lead to nowhere, and also updating the charges table to show the new charges. And that's all the changes are really. Apart from that, it's pretty much the same policy as the previous year. In terms of the responses, they're in paragraphs 32 and 33, and 65% of respondents who expressed an opinion agreed with the proposal to add a quick guide, and 64% agreed with the update of the wording, particularly in the appeals section. There were other comments, but it's important to note that the changes that were as part of the future services consultation had already been included in this policy. And so a lot of the comments related to changes that had already been approved in a previous round, and were expressing more sort of dissatisfaction about changes that had already happened and been approved. There were two that were definitely about this particular process, and they're outlined in paragraph 37. The first is really sort of applauding the introduction of a quick guide, but saying we should have perhaps an even quicker and even more definite guide. Unfortunately, the policy is as it is because we need to make all of those considerations, and it couldn't really be much simpler and still be a kind of full policy. And then the second one disagrees with the quick guide on the grounds that they don't believe we're telling the truth, I think. It seems like from the comment. In terms of our responses to that, we are genuinely introducing a quick guide because we think it does make it easier to understand and simpler. And the comments that were about stuff that had already happened that's already water under the bridge, and that's already been approved. So there's not anything that we can do about that, and that tends to be the case in particularly in post 16, that there are a lot of comments on just the operation of the service and the fact that it's chargeable and stuff like that. Therefore, I'd hope to get approval for this change to policy because it is quite a minor change, and we would genuinely believe it makes it easier for parents to understand.
John, thank you very much for that, and thank you for highlighting that comments on the future services consultation were taken on board during that consultation and accommodated where appropriate. So we're not going to go back in time, but it is reassuring to see the significant support for what we're proposing. And personally, I'm really pleased to see the quick guide coming forward, and the support that should give to making appeals clearer and easier where appropriate. So this is good news, I think. Are there any questions? I see Councillor Porter has dropped off. I know Councillor Baines is still there. Anyone got any questions or comments on this? No. Okay. No hands up. On that basis, I am happy to take the recommendation to approve the post-16 transport policy 2627 as detailed in Appendix 3. That's fully approved. On that basis, I will hand back now to Councillor Chad for the rest of her decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. The final item on my agenda for today is the final decision on the amalgamation of Park Community School with Riders Infant School and Riders Junior School in Havant. And Richard, you're presenting this one.
Apologies, Councillor Chad. Rob is going to present this one for you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Rob.
No, it's quite all right. Thank you, Councillor Chad. Thank you, Rich. So yeah, this is the report on the outcome of the statutory consultation phase on the proposal to amalgamate Park Community School with Riders Infant School and Riders Junior School. Presents 3 recommendations for you, Councillor Chad. The first, to amalgamate the schools to create an all-through school delivering education for children aged 4 to 16 years. The second recommendation is to approve the closure of Riders Infant and Junior Schools with effect from the 1st of September 2026. And the third, which is to change the age range at Park Community School from 11 to 16 years to 4 to 16 years. So this is a follow-on from the non-statutory consultation, which was undertaken last year at the request of both governing bodies for Park and the Federation of Riders Infant and Juniors. And the statutory consultation took place towards the end of last year, between November and December, and the responses are summarised within the report. So this proposal seeks to formalise support that is already provided to riders by Park, and to create an all-through school. But quite important to just state that that does still see a primary provision delivered at the riders site. It doesn't seek to create an all-through school at the Park community site, but it's more about the Park having the overall support and providing an offer all through one at the primary provision, which would be delivered at riders as it is currently, and then one at Park for secondary. It maintains a primary offer in the area and is really about improving standards at Riders Infant and Junior School and ensuring a strong offer for the children in that local area, which is an area of deprivation. Now, support has been provided to Riders Infant and Junior and to Park through HIAS, the Improvement and Advisory Service, and that would continue post-decision to allow the development and implementation of an all-through curriculum and to upskill staff across both sites to ensure that you've got that continuity across both sites as well, both primary and secondary. The local authority would also work with the senior leadership team at Park to ensure that staff at Riders are retained if at all possible, and if that can't be facilitated, then they would continue to be supported to find other opportunities, redeployment opportunities, other local schools or with the county council where appropriate. For the most part, though, the right structure is already in place, and it just goes back to what I mentioned earlier about this formalising arrangements that have been in place for these schools for some time. revised admissions arrangements would be implemented, and those are detailed in the report. They would be put in place from September 27 onwards. We don't foresee any transport issues brought about by this proposal. The response to the consultation there are included in the report. We had some expressing concerns about an all-through provision at Park. As I mentioned earlier on, we're not seeking to put an all-through provision in place at Park. It's about having an all-through provision across the two sites, but administered by Park and the senior leadership team there as well. There were also some concerns raised by the local schools around the potential impact on their numbers. As a response to that, we are seeking to hold the primary phase admission number at the primary phase at 30, which is supported by our forecast. But this would continue to be monitored and reviewed as we do currently for schools across Hampshire, and we would review that as and when required. I mean, ultimately, this is a recommendation to put in place a positive and proactive step to maintain a primary offer in this area and ensure the best possible educational offer for the children in this area, the children at Riders currently, and future children in this locality as well. So I think that's everything that I'd plan to say.
Thank you, Rob, for presenting the report. I think that actually this offers a real opportunity for the community locally, and I think it's a really positive thing. I personally have witnessed our all-through education in Alderwood on split sites, which has worked really, really well. So I can't see this being any different, really, and I think it will benefit the children so much to have that, not just the high standard of education that that Park currently does deliver for its community, but being able to support Riders Infant in doing that as well would be great, and just will really benefit those young people all the way through their education. So I think it's great. Really pleased to hear about the support for staff as well, with either staying at the school or looking for other opportunities elsewhere. And absolutely agree that in regards to maintaining that one, the current 1 form entry, but constantly reviewing that as we do with all schools to see how the population changes and the desires of the population, because obviously it is parental preference at the end of the day that how schools are school places are allocated. I think Councillor Baines wants to say something about this. So Councillor Baines, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Judd. Just to echo some of your comments on this, I think it's a really positive item. I know Chris Sanders, the head, very well at Park. He's an excellent local leader in the Havant area, and I think it's going to be a very positive step for local families and children in that area. So very pleased to see this item sort of going all the way through.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Councillor Chody. I equally support your comments and those of Councillor Baines. This is good for the students, the children. It's good for the schools, and it's good for the community. So I'm really pleased to see this go ahead, and I'm grateful to officers for the extensive work that they've done, and to those parents that responded to the consultation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about this? Well, I think this is a really good news story and really positive, like we've all said, for the community. So I'm very happy to approve all 3 of the recommendations for this one today. That comes to the end of my part of the decision making. So now I'm going to hand over to the Executive Member for Education, Councillor Forster.
Councillor Chad, thank you very much, and welcome everyone to my education decision day. We'll carry straight on and go into item 4 on the agenda, which is the determination of 2027-28 admission arrangements. Nick, I think you'll be taking us through this.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Forster. So this is the annual report that informs you on the annual exercise for the local authority, which is the consultation on the admission arrangements for 350 plus Hampshire County Council voluntary controlled and community schools for the year 27-28. Ultimately, the report seeks your approval of the arrangements for all of those schools, and the arrangements are outlined in 19 annexes that constitute the arrangements, and there are several recommendations that seek your agreement outlined in section 2. The consultation process is a statutory duty under the School Admissions Code. All proposed arrangements are part of a pre-consultation process around published admission numbers, school-specific criteria and catchment changes, and are subject to admission forum scrutiny before being published in the statutory autumn term consultation. Any responses received as part of that consultation are then considered by admissions forum in the spring term, prior to them making their recommendations to the executive member for education. So just briefly talking through some of those proposals, there are some specific policy changes to the admissions policies outlined in annexes A to E. So 3 proposals. There's the removal of the displaced child stroke sibling criterion from all 5 policies. That is a unique oversubscription criterion to Hampshire, but ultimately it's something we've had for several years in response to growth in the system. As I'll come on to later, we have a lot more surplus in the system, far fewer children coming into the school system, and consequently, this particular arrangement was complicating arrangements which are required to be clear, fair and objective under the admissions code. And in the last admission round benefited 0.006% of applicants in the admissions round. And so it's proposed that we remove that particular criterion from the arrangements. Furthermore, there's an additional explanation of demonstrable skills shortage under the child of staff criterion provided in the policy. Previously, that definition hasn't been provided, but to ensure that we're as clear as we possibly can be in the arrangements, that is also now being included. And then there is also the removal of all mentions of resource provision places, because these are ultimately mainstream admission policies. And this is following previous independent appeal panel decisions and subsequent legal advice as a result of that. So we have those 3 changes proposed, and there's just an adjustment to wording whereby we were quoting the wrong decision maker. We were quoting the executive member for children's services rather than for education in the policies. We then move on to Annex F, which is the school specific criteria. These are criteria that we allow schools to request in order to stop there being local anomalies. When you have so many schools in an administrative area, it can lead to some anomalies in a local area if you apply the same blanket policy for all schools. Therefore, schools are allowed to request school-specific criteria as a reflection of local conditions in their area. So just to briefly outline these, we are removing 2 school-specific criteria at an individual school's request. These were local criterion that were relevant to the school at a time of growth, but as there is increased surplus, they're no longer relevant for that school. We've got 3 amended criteria around the on-site preschool or nursery wording. We have 3 additions consistent with other school-specific criterion. So that's related to junior schools requesting an increase in numbers by 1 or 2 children, which, because they don't have class size regulations like infant schools, they can request. And then furthermore, we have 15 transitional arrangements being removed. These are arrangements as a result from previous catchment changes, and they have now lapsed. But on top of that, we have 7 further transitional arrangements included, again, as a result of the proposed catchment changes that I will come on to shortly. We then have a significant number of PAN changes proposed. So at Annex G, we have 2 increases to PAN, again, just 1 or 2 children at the junior schools requests. but we do have 17 reductions proposed to the primary school PANS. Paragraph 38 gives a little bit more detail about the impact of the falling birth rate on schools, many of which are now needing to reduce PAN in response. However, just to confirm that all of the PAN reductions are in line with forecast to ensure that we are not going to frustrate parental preference or local demand. And then we also have 2 further proposed reductions to secondary PANs at Annex H. So we are starting to see some of those lower numbers in the primary phase feed into the secondary phase. And we do, in conjunction with strategic development, need to respond accordingly to support those schools. Annexes I to J are the proposed catchment changes for 2027. These proposed catchment changes have been part of a non-statutory consultation run by the strategic development team, and they've also been part of the formal admissions statutory consultation. So Annex I is the proposed change to catchment areas at Valemead Junior School and Fleet Infant School in order to take account of the planned new housing and the new primary school at Heartland Village. The proposal ultimately seeks to ensure that the Academy Trust running Heartland Village Primary School will have a catchment area to determine as part of their arrangements and support our commitment to local places for local children. We had 7 responses, as you'll see in the report, as part of the non-statutory consultation. We didn't actually have any responses as part of the statutory consultation, and it was a mixed bag of support in that particular case. But ultimately, having considered the responses alongside colleagues from strategic development, we did not consider that any of those consultation responses necessitated a change to the proposed arrangements around the future catchment area for Heartland Village Primary School. There will be transitional arrangements to 2030 to mitigate the impact of the catchment change on any families who have previously been in the catchment area of Fleet Infant School and Valemead Junior School. Annex J is the other catchment area change, and that's to take account of the relocation of Henry Court Community College. There's also a little bit of tidying in one small part of the Brookfield and Salisbury infant and junior catchment areas, and that's to take account of a development that is geographically very close to Cornerstone Primary School, but would have fallen into the Salisbury infant and junior catchment and Brookfield without that tidying. So it was seen as sensible to take the opportunity to resolve that at this time as well. But ultimately, the proposals will support the creation of a single consistent catchment for the Whiteley area and is supported by Cams Hill and Fareham Academy, who are academies making their own changes in line with what is being proposed by the County Council. There were no responses to the formal statutory consultation, but there were 28 responses to the non-statutory consultation proposal. Many of them were general comments and several were not supportive, as you will see in the report. A lot of those comments that didn't support the proposal were actually linked into the original decision around relocating Henry Court from its current site to the new site in Whiteley in September 2027. But having considered all of those responses very carefully and having discussed it with the strategic development team, again, it's not considered necessary to adjust the proposed change, which is still seeking to ensure that creation of a single consistent catchment for those residents in the Whiteley area across what will be the 3 schools in that area from September 2027. Again, there are transitional arrangements proposed to 2030 to ensure that families of children already attending Henry Court aren't disadvantaged in this particular case. In this case, if they have a sibling attending the school who was previously catchment, it will ensure that a younger sibling is also considered an in-catchment sibling for the purposes of keeping those families together as much as possible. Annex K is the community and voluntary controlled nursery policy. There have been adjustments proposed to this policy this year. That was following an informal process of consultation and listening by colleagues in services for young children to our community and voluntary controlled nurseries. And this was with a view to ensure they better meet the needs of local communities, and furthermore some adjustments to some of the wording following some definition changes from the Department for Education. Annex L is the policy for our only community sixth form in Hampshire. and ultimately adjustments have been made to provide clarity over the published admission number for external applicants. The main body of the policy remains unchanged. The wording in section 3 has just been tidied up to make sure it's as clear as possible for external applicants of children who aren't already on roll at the school in year 11. We've then got several annexes which are standard documents. We run the main round process for year R3 and 7. The only changes to that from previous years are the updated dates for the coordinated scheme. Likewise, Annex N, which is the supplementary information form for parents applying for voluntary controlled school places under the faith criterion. Annex O is our random allocation process, whereby if children are equidistant and fall under the same criteria and are vying for the last available place at a school, is how we separate them and make that final offer, so that remains unchanged. We then have Annex P, which is the list of federated schools where children attending the linked infant school in a federation are given higher priority in the junior school. That is an unchanged list from last year. Annex Q is a copy of the consultation webpage. Annex R is the relevant area, which is a technical term under the School Admissions Code, but fundamentally that's the area we're required to consult with each time we run an admissions consultation, and that's required to be looked at every 2 years. And then Annex S are the statutory consultation responses. In there, you'll see there is one response related to the nursery policy. That was requesting some detail and clarity that was provided by colleagues in services for young children. We then had 6 responses related to the PAM reductions. And just by reassurance, all reductions are supported by forecasts and capacity in the local area. Regarding Free Grounds Junior School, the local authority and school have agreed to ensure that all linked children who express a preference will be offered a place where there is a slight disconnect between those numbers for this one single year. Fundamentally, as I mentioned and is outlined in paragraph 38, the majority of reductions are in order to support school viability and are supported by forecasts. So in conclusion, the conclusion is that the Executive Member for Education approved the proposed admission arrangements for the admission rounds for applying for school places in the academic year 2027-28, and this is broken down into the recommendations from the Hampshire Admissions Forum outlined in section 2, which seek the Executive Member's approval.
Nick, thank you very much indeed for covering that 200-page report, very succinctly covered, so well done for that. I'm totally supportive of everything and appreciate the extensive work that's gone into it. Can I ask members or anyone else if there's any comments or invite any questions? Shaking heads. Great. Nick, you've got off lightly then. And I think that's testament to the work done in the report and in your introduction, which has covered it succinctly. The only comment additional comments I wanted to make are really pleased to see the changes in my division of Fleet to accommodate Heartland Village. I know that the build is going well for September 27. So really looking forward to seeing that. And residents are very keen to do that. I think the way that it's planned with year R and the transition schedule really accommodates the community, the children, avoids disruption, and equally means that some of the other schools don't get impacted by children leaving. So it's very well considered, and that's just an example in one case of a very large number that are taken forward. So well done. On that basis, I would like to approve all the recommendations as detailed in item 4. I'm not going to read them out, but as detailed in the report, the recommendations for the admission arrangements for school places in the academic year 27-28, as detailed in the report, are fully approved. Thank you, Nick. That moves us on to the next item, which is item 5, Bramley C of E primary in Basingstoke. John, are you taking us through this one?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Forster. So this afternoon we are excuse me, seeking approval for an investment of £1.35 million for the proposal at Bramley Church of England Primary School in Basingstoke, subject to approval of funding contained within the Children's Services Capital Programme by Cabinet and full Council. This scheme is to be fully funded through developer contributions and will deliver a new single-storey extension that will provide much-needed flexible teaching space. These proposals will provide enhanced space for children with special educational needs, ensuring the school can continue to meet the diverse needs of its community. Bramley Primary currently accommodates around 465 pupils with a capacity for 515. The project does not increase pupil numbers. Instead, it addresses identified curriculum and inclusion needs within the existing role. The drawing illustrating the proposals is contained within the pack on page 419. The extension itself has been designed to current standards, is highly insulated and has natural ventilation with heat recovery system installed. It also includes an external canopy to manage summer heat gain and provides a small terrace and associated soft landscaping. All the works fall under permitted development, so no planning consent is required for these works. The construction will be delivered through the intermediate construction framework, with works due to begin in the summer term this year and complete in the autumn. The school will remain open throughout the period with strict segregation of contractor access to maintain safety. So this project provides high quality adaptable accommodation that will strengthen inclusion and teaching provision for the children of Bramley, and I recommend this proposal for your approval. You're on mute, Councillor Foster.
Someone had to do it today. Apologies. John, can I thank you very much for the report and the introduction to it. I'd like to invite members any comments or queries. No. What's proposed seems really good. Looking at the views of it, the drawings, it's been really nicely designed, so it blends in with the existing school, rather than being a blot on the landscape, which we've seen when looking at what some other councils are doing. So I think again, it's really good work by our team. I'm excited to see this come forward, and on that basis, I am happy to approve the recommendation to give approval to spend the 1.35 million on the project for Bramley C of E Primary School, subject to the caveats as detailed in the recommendation. So thank you very much for the work on that, John. Takes us on to the last item, item 6, Harroway Community School in Andover. John again.
Myself again. Thank you very much. So for this project, we are seeking spend approval for £1,090,000 for the development of a new specialist resource provision for pupils with autism at Harroway Community School in Andover. Again, this is subject to approval of the funding contained within the Children's Services Capital Programme by Cabinet and full Council. Harroway currently accommodates just under 1,000 pupils, and like many secondary schools in the county, is seeing growing demand for specialist support for young people. At present, the shortage of local specialist places is leading to increased reliance on independent and non-maintained sector placements. The project directly addresses this challenge by creating 15 high-quality local specialist places and enabling pupils to remain within their community. This scheme involves the refurbishment of existing classrooms to form a new resource provision, which includes teaching spaces, life skills areas and calming rooms. To ensure the mainstream teaching continues uninterrupted, a refurbished double modular building will also be installed on the site to replace the accommodation that's going to be used to form the resource provision. A drawing illustrating these proposals is contained on page 437 of the pack. The project is to be funded through a combination of dedicated school grant and high needs provision capital allocation. As before, no planning application is required as all these works fall under permitted development. Taking the project forward, the modular works will begin early this summer, allowing the refurbishment works to be completed in time for the new accommodation to open in September 2026. I'm very happy to take any questions, but I recommend this proposal for your approval.
John, thank you once again. And just a couple of comments from me. I think this one, like the previous one, just demonstrates how far ahead we are of the curve in light of the white paper this week that's just come out, and the work that government is now supporting on the SEND. It's really positive that Hampshire, with its plan for 1,000 additional places for children with SEND to 2030, is already way ahead of many other authorities. So I'm grateful to Stuart, to Natalie, and to all those involved, especially on the design and delivery side, because doing these works, planning for them, and delivering them in the really fast time frame, as you're just in illustrating on this one, to have it open in such a short time is absolutely fantastic, and does deliver what our children need across the county. Do I have any questions from anyone or comments? No? Well, thank you, John. Then I'm happy to give approval to spend the 1,990,000 as detailed on the proposals for Harroway Community School handover, subject to the caveats detailed in the report. On that, I think that brings us to the end of today's meeting. All those who are still with us, I'd like to thank you very much. Tremendous amount of work has gone into this. It's really appreciated, and delivering for our children local education for them of the highest standards is exactly what we're doing. And, well done. Can I ask Emma if you could please end the webcast?